Do you ever feel like when you go vote in November, the same choices are on the ballot every time? Not literally the same candidates, but the same this versus that, us versus them, red versus blue. Doesn't it get exhausting? Let's talk about what we can do to change it. I remember being so excited to vote in the 2020 election because I knew we were going to restore decency and competency to the White House. I thought that election was really going to be different than previous elections. I sat down, excitedly started researching every candidate up and down the ballot, marking my sample ballot as I went. But after the first few candidates, I remember getting this sinking feeling in my stomach. The website started to bleed together. They all had the same phrases, the same hot button issues. Heck, it even seemed like everybody had the same headshots. It turns out that election wasn't so different from past elections after all. Let's face it, this system, this plurality, winner take all, us versus them, red versus blue, primary winner versus primary winner, it isn't working for us. There is a better way. It's called ranked choice voting, and we can join hundreds of cities and states and other countries who have already implemented it. I believe ranked choice voting paired with top 4 primaries is the single greatest reform we can adopt in our election system. Ranked choice voting is oftentimes referred to as instant runoff voting, and that might be the best way to explain it. Under this voting method, voters get to rank candidates, as many as they'd like, based on their preferences. And if no candidate wins more than 50% of first place votes, the top candidates basically are in an instant runoff. That means we count the next votes, say the second and third place votes, from the candidates who got the least amount of votes and lost. In the end, you end up getting the same results as if you had, held a runoff election a few weeks later. Let's consider an example using political ideologies. This is me. I'm a progressive Democrat, and I believe healthcare is a human right, everyone deserves a quality education, and poverty shouldn't exist in America. So I vote for candidates whose platforms best represent these values. Let's say we're voting in a primary election for, let's say, state senate. We have party primaries in North Carolina, so we'd be voting in the Democratic primary. Let's say 60% of Democrats in our district are progressive like me, and 40% are more moderate. Lastly, in our example, let's say there are 3 well-qualified candidates. Reflecting the district demographics, 2 of the candidates are progressive Democrats, and 1 is a moderate Democrat. All right, our example is all set up and seems reasonable, so let's head to the polls. I like progressive candidate 1. Progressive candidate 2 is also great, but I think progressive candidate 1's marijuana reform ideas are stellar, so I cast my vote for them. Remember, 60% of Democrats in our district are more progressive. They too think both of the progressive candidates are great, and they end up somewhat splitting their votes among them. Progressive candidate 1 comes in with 35% of the vote, and progressive candidate 2 secures 25% of the vote. But remember that 40% of Democrats in our district that are more moderate? This minority doesn't like the progressive candidate so much, so they cast their votes for moderate candidate 1, who comes in with 40% of the vote. So, let's look at the results. Guess what happens in North Carolina? Moderate candidate 1, representing a minority of the district, wins the primary. Clearly that isn't democratic. We know either progressive candidate 1 or 2 would likely have beaten moderate candidate 1 in a head-to-head race, but they don't stand a chance in our plurality vote winner-take-all system. This split vote is called a spoiler effect. It prevents us from simply voting our conscience and instead forces us to kind of guess who can most realistically win. We don't want our votes to be wasted after all, and we definitely don't want to accidentally help a candidate who doesn't represent our values. That's stressful and doesn't make a lot of sense. So how would it work with ranked choice voting? Let's go back to our illustration. It's simple. Instead of having to pick only one candidate, progressive candidates get the option to rank candidates. We can vote for as many as we like, or only one if we prefer. Since no candidate landed over 50%, no one actually represents a majority of voters yet. With ranked choice voting, we see that progressive candidate 2 has the least number of first place votes. Since we know they can't win, they're eliminated, and we would then count their supporters' other ranked votes. Let's say everyone who voted for Progressive Candidate 2 marked Progressive Candidate 1 as their second choice. Now our results look like this. We now have a winner, a real winner, who fairly won a majority of votes. With ranked choice voting, even if voters had a feeling Progressive Candidate 2 wouldn't win, they still feel empowered to vote their conscience because they know their second choice votes will still be counted. Now listen, I know that seems a bit complicated, but the best solutions sometimes are. Clearly, ranked choice voting produces more democratic results. And the best part is that actually voting using the system is much easier than explaining all the different scenarios that could take place. You simply rank your preferred candidates in order. And hey, if you want to vote for just one candidate like you always have, you can. It's that simple. Ranked choice voting alone would tremendously improve the quality of our elections. But the real transformation happens when we pair it with top 4 primaries. Again, North Carolina has open party primaries, so you have to choose which party ballot you pick up, usually Democrat or Republican, and you can only vote for candidates in that party. The candidates with the most votes in each party advance to the general election, and that's why it feels like every race is red versus blue. In top 4 primaries, it doesn't matter what party each candidate represents, they all run together in a single primary. And since we have ranked choice voting, there can be no spoiler effect. The 4 candidates most voters support advance to the general election, where voters again get to rank their choices from those 4 candidates to elect a winner. Why is this so important? Well, if you've ever been in a minority party before, you know. It doesn't really matter who wins your minority primary, because whoever wins the majority primary will win the general election. Now, you might think this wouldn't happen all that often, but this is actually the case in most of the country. In fact, more than 3/4 of congressional districts aren't competitive in the general election. So if you're a candidate in the majority party, your incentive isn't to appeal to most voters, just the primary voters in your party. That doesn't make any sense, but it's how our system currently operates. This dynamic has polarized our country and locked our elected representatives in a race to the extremes. I believe ranked choice voting with top 4 primaries is one of the best antidotes we have to our gridlocked, hyperpolarized system. It will incentivize candidates to appeal to a true majority of North Carolinians and disincentivize extremism. It incentivizes progress and disincentivizes obstructionism. It will bring citizens together and help us build a government that works for all of us. And that's why I support ranked choice voting with top 4 primaries.